What's up guys, it's LOH at Low Tech, and this is going to be a quick comparison of the Lenovo Tab 2 A10 and the Lenovo Tab 4 8 Plus. And before you start saying in the comments about how they are very different devices, they are. This is the 8-inch version, but it is exactly the same as the 10-inch version, other than it being 8 inches. And they're both the US versions, which is sadly a qualifier I needed to make because the Lenovo does release very different devices around the world. Starting off the bat, this is like 2 years old now. It was released mid 2015. It is now late 2017 when we are now getting the Tab 4 here in the US at least. And these devices share a lot more in common than you might initially think. Obviously, there have been some changes. It has been 2 years, so there are, some incremental upgrades to be had here, but putting all that aside, these devices are very much identical. So this one on here, this one on the left here is the Lenovo Tab 2. It was released in 2015. It came with Android 4.4 KitKat. It was then upgraded to Lollipop and now runs Marshmallow. So it has 3 major software releases on this device, and it was $200 brand new when we purchased it back in 2015. This device on the right is the Tab 4. It goes for $229 currently. The 10-inch version does come in at about $299. This one does have LTE, whereas the US model of the Tab 2 did not have LTE. So if they were, both Wi-Fi editions only, or they're both LTE editions, they would probably be very similar in price in terms of, $200 versus about $200 or $300 versus about $300. And this is not a video to necessarily slight Lenovo for their Tab 4 line, but more to show how little tablets have improved in the past 2 years, but also how great the Tab 2 was for its time and even today. So remember that the 10-inch device on this one is equally spec'd as the 8-inch version, but the resolution on the screen is exactly the same, 1920 by 1200. The resolution of the cameras, back camera 8 megapixel, front camera 2 megapixel, exactly the same. The amount of internal storage for the US editions, obviously, is exactly the same, 16 gigs, 16 gigs. The amount of RAM is exactly the same, 2 gigs, 2 gigs. The international version does have 3 and 4 gigs of options available, but that's beside the point. They both have micro SD cards. The list kind of goes on and on for how similar these devices are. So obviously the internals are a little bit different. This runs on a MediaTek quad core running at 1.7 gigahertz. This runs on a Snapdragon 625, which is 2 gigahertz, and that's octa-core. But in reality, these devices operate pretty close to being the same, and in some cases the older device ends up being a little bit faster, which is kind of surprising, especially since in the internet this has wireless N, so obviously it's 2 years old, there was no AC back in the day, and this is wireless AC. And as you can see, depending on the situation, there are circumstances where this one's going to be faster, which you'd expect, and there are situations where this one is going to be not necessarily a lot faster, but equally as fast or, pretty similar in speed to this one, which is, again, 2 years newer and sells for about the same price as this one did back in the day. The only difference I really see between the two is how this particular website formats its data based off of the DPI of the screen. So that's why, for some reason, the text is up on top on this one and it's below on this one. But as a pretty standard website nowadays, it has it's coded to work on a variety of devices. They both end up working and loading in very, very similar speeds. And it's also interesting how these devices are kind of tailored to the US market. So on this device on the left, obviously there was an international version that did have a few changes, but in this device, blue back, Dolby speakers, it's it's a pretty nice looking device. It does have a big logo here for Lenovo, what this one does lack. This one has a little Lenovo logo on the side. But again, blue side, these are Dolby speakers. And really, for being how old this device is, again, it's not a slight on the Tab 4, it's just really showing how great the Tab 2 was for its time and why, if you have one, it may actually not be that much of an upgrade to get a Tab 4. The Tab 2 is just so good, unless you really needed the LTE. But again, if you had an international version, this one did have LTE, so they're almost the same. The cameras are a little bit nicer on this one, obviously. Again, incremental improvements. The focal length on this one is a little bit smaller, so you can fit more people in the picture, especially on the front-facing camera. But for the most part, these devices are actually very much the same. And again, this is more of a comment on tablet stagnation than it is a comment on necessarily Lenovo, because for $229 for the Tab 4, it's actually a really great deal. And I got this one specifically, as you can probably tell, to give to my daughter to watch videos on. This one was recently upgraded to Marshmallow, so there's not a whole lot on it, but there are no running background tasks. There are, other than the ones we just opened. And again, on very similar workloads and similar situations, they operate very much the same, even though they are 2 years apart. Now, obviously there are different improvements besides these. If the processor is faster on this one, it's just not dramatically so. The GPU is going to be significantly faster, so if you do want to play 3D games, the Tab 4 is going to be a much better option than the Tab 2. But in most situations, under the use circumstances that are presented to most tablet users, internet, video, again, you can kind of see that this device is meant for my child, but even looking at these two devices for video, the one on the left loaded faster. So finding the exact same videos again, this one loaded faster this time. This one loaded faster this time. So it's just really interesting to see how much of an upgrade this one is, at the same time being how little of an upgrade it is. Long story short, if you have this device, don't feel bad about it, because it's still a great device and it still gives you most of the same performance that you're going to get out of a modern day device, as long as you don't necessarily need the increase in LTE bands. If you have the LTE model, or you don't need LTE at all, if you have the Wi-Fi model like I do, there isn't a whole lot to upgrade for. The main reason why I prefer the Tab 4 over the Tab 2 is mainly due to USB-C, the micro USB on this one. It works fine, it still works, and I use it all the time, but USB-C is what all of our new devices have, so it lets me kind of eliminate a charger going forward. But for the most part, if you're okay with micro USB and you have this device here, and you don't necessarily need the 8-inch version, if you're looking 10-inch versus 10-inch, tablets are almost the same, even from the same manufacturer, 2 years spaced apart. Thanks for watching, guys. This is LH Low Tech. I hope you found this video interesting. If you do, give us a thumbs up. We are going to have a full review of the Tab 4 in the next coming days, so be on the lookout for that. But if you have anything else you want to see about these devices, or more comparisons you want made, let us know. Subscribe.